The strange encounter. The forest was quiet, and the sun had just begun to set. The trees stood tall, their leaves rustling in the soft breeze. Among the shadows, a human wandered, lost in his thoughts. He had been walking for hours, trying to find a way out of the dense woods, but it seemed like the forest was endless. As he pushed through the thick branches, he heard a faint sound. It was soft, almost like a whisper, carried by the wind. He paused, looking around, but saw nothing unusual. Shrugging it off, he continued walking, but then he heard it again, closer this time. It was a soft voice, like someone calling him, but there was no one in sight. He stepped forward cautiously, his heart racing. What was that sound? He moved closer to the source, the sound growing louder, until he finally spotted something strange. At the base of an old oak tree, he saw a small creature. It was no taller than his knee, with smooth, silver-colored skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dimming light. Its eyes were large and bright, and they stared directly at him, filled with a strange intelligence. The human froze, unsure of what to do. The creature didn't look dangerous, but it certainly didn't look like anything he had ever seen before. Its tiny mouth parted slightly and it spoke, its voice gentle yet clear. "I can clean your boots, human. Just feed me until you're full," it said. The human blinked, confused. What kind of deal was this? He had been lost in the forest for hours, starving, and now this tiny creature was offering to clean his boots in exchange for food? He didn't know why, but something about the creature's eyes made him hesitate. He was tired and hungry, but he also knew that nothing in the world was free. Was this a trick? Or was it just a strange creature looking for food? The creature seemed to sense his hesitation. It tilted its head slightly and added, "I'm not asking for much. Just feed me, and I will clean your boots. That's all. You'll feel better, and I'll serve you." The human stared at it, still unsure. The offer was strange, but it didn't seem dangerous. Slowly, he reached into his pack, pulled out a small piece of bread, and held it out to the creature. The creature's eyes brightened as it reached for the food, devouring it quickly. As soon as it finished, it smiled up at him. "Thank you," it said, its voice soft and satisfied. Without waiting for the human to respond, the creature got to work. It bent down, took the boots in its tiny hands, and began cleaning them with surprising skill. The human watched in awe. The boots that had been covered in mud and dirt were now spotless. He couldn't help but feel a strange sense of calm. What was this creature? Why did it want food so badly, and what would it do next? As the creature finished cleaning his boots, it looked up at him again, its bright eyes gleaming. "Feed me until you're full, human, and I will clean your boots and serve you." It was as if the creature's words were a promise, or perhaps a command, but the human couldn't tell. Still, something about the way it spoke made him curious. What was it about this creature that made him trust it even though he didn't understand it? Maybe it was just his exhaustion, or maybe it was something else, something deeper, but at that moment all he could think of was how strange this encounter had been, and how he had no idea what would happen next. As he prepared to leave, the creature's voice echoed behind him. "You will return, human. Feed me, and I will stay." The words were not a question but a statement. The human paused, looking back at the creature. He didn't know why, but a part of him felt like this was only the beginning of something he couldn't fully understand. The creature had said he would return, and strangely, he felt like it was true. With that thought lingering in his mind, he turned and walked away, wondering what he had just gotten himself into. The first meal. The following day, the human found himself once again wandering through the thick forest, though this time his mind was preoccupied. The strange encounter with the tiny creature weighed heavily on his thoughts. What was it? Why had it asked for food, and what did it mean by "feed me until you're full"? He had barely slept the night before, his mind racing with questions. Yet as the sun broke through the trees, he found himself walking in the direction of the old oak where he had met the creature. Part of him was curious, a part that didn't fully understand why he felt this pull to return. He had ignored the forest once before, but now, the forest seemed to be calling him. It was as if he had already made a decision, even if he didn't fully understand it yet. When he reached the tree, there was no sign of the creature. He stood still, looking around, the air heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. For a moment, he thought maybe the creature had vanished, or perhaps it had been a figment of his imagination. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a faint glow from the base of the tree. It was the creature sitting patiently, its large, bright eyes fixed on him. The human felt a strange sense of relief, as if he had been waiting for this moment without realizing it. He took a cautious step forward, his hand resting on the small pack of food he had brought with him. The creature's eyes twinkled, and it spoke before he could even ask. "Feed me, human," it said softly. "I am hungry, and you are the one who must feed me." Without thinking, the human opened his pack, pulling out the last of his bread and offering it to the creature. As soon as it touched the food, the creature eagerly devoured it, its movements swift and graceful. It seemed to consume it in seconds, and then just as quickly it looked up at him again, its smile widening. "Thank you," it said, its voice barely a whisper. "I am satisfied. For now." The human stared at the creature, unsure of how to respond. There was something undeniably strange about the way it spoke, something that made him feel both intrigued and uneasy. The creature suddenly hopped to its feet, moving with surprising speed. "I will clean your boots now, human. You have fed me, and I will serve you." It quickly moved toward his boots, which were still caked in mud from his previous journey. As it began its work, the human couldn't help but watch, feeling an odd mix of curiosity and apprehension. The creature's tiny hands worked with precision, scraping away the dirt and grime as though it had done this 1,000 times before. The human couldn't help but notice how skilled it was, its tiny movements almost mechanical in their efficiency. The boots, which had once seemed so heavy with mud, were now spotless. After a few moments, the creature paused, looking up at the human with its wide, unblinking eyes. "I have cleaned your boots," it said. "Now I must ask again. Will you feed me until you are full? Or perhaps you would prefer I stay?" The human felt a strange knot form in his stomach. This wasn't just an offer, it felt like a test. Was it trying to bond with him? Or was there something more to its words? He had been raised to be cautious, to trust his instincts, but there was something in the creature's eyes that made him hesitate. He stood silently for a moment, weighing his options. He could walk away, leave the forest behind, and never look back. But another part of him, the part that had been drawn to the creature in the first place, felt an undeniable pull. Was it hunger, curiosity, or something deeper? He couldn't say for sure, but he found himself reaching into his pack again, pulling out another piece of bread. The creature's eyes lit up, and it quickly accepted the offering, eating eagerly, almost as if it hadn't been fed in days. "Thank you," it murmured once more. The words felt like a promise, one that he couldn't fully understand. But as the creature ate, something began to shift. The air around them seemed to hum with an odd energy, like the forest itself was reacting to their interaction. The ground, beneath the human's feet, felt slightly warmer, as if some hidden force had awakened. He glanced around nervously, but the creature didn't seem to notice. It was too absorbed in its meal. After a moment, the creature stopped eating and looked up at the human, its face serious now. "Human," it said, "you must understand. I do not ask for food out of hunger alone. I need something more from you." The human felt a shiver run down his spine. What was it saying? What did it need from him? "I offer you service," the creature continued, its voice lower now, almost hypnotic. "You will feed me, and in return I will give you power. The power to control your fate, the power to see the world as you never have before." The human swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. Could he really trust this creature? And what kind of power was it talking about? The creature had already shown strange abilities, and its offer seemed too good to be true. "You will feed me, and I will stay," the creature said, its eyes locking onto his. "But once you choose to feed me, you will never be the same again." The human hesitated, his heart racing. He hadn't expected any of this, and yet there was a part of him, an unfamiliar part, that felt ready to take the leap. Would he accept the creature's offer and let it stay with him? Or would he walk away, forever wondering what might have been? He took a deep breath and made his decision. "All right," he said quietly. "I will feed you, but only if you promise me one thing." The creature looked up at him, waiting. "What do you ask?" "That you will explain everything to me," the human replied. "Tell me why you want this food and what you intend to do with the power you offer." The creature's lips curled into a mysterious smile. "Very well, human. I will explain. But know this, once you feed me, there will be no turning back." The human nodded, ready to hear what came next. The growing curiosity, the days that followed, felt strangely different for the human. He found himself returning to the old oak tree with an unsettling regularity, as though something in him had changed. The creature, as it had promised, continued to ask for food, and with each offering it seemed to grow stronger, more vibrant. Its eyes gleamed brighter with every meal, its skin glowing just a little more each time. At first, the human had felt uneasy about the creature's demands, but as time passed, the unease began to fade. It was as if he had become accustomed to the strange little being, accustomed to its presence in the forest. There was something calming about the creature, something that made the human feel at ease. But beneath the surface there was always the whisper of doubt. What was the true cost of this arrangement? What would happen if he kept feeding it, day after day? The creature, for its part, never showed signs of slowing down. It worked tirelessly, not just cleaning the human's boots now, but taking care of his other needs too. It would gather firewood, hunt small creatures for food, and even offer advice on how to navigate the forest. The human had learned to trust the creature's words, though a part of him wondered if he should be wary. It seemed to know things about the forest, about the stars, and even about the human's own past that it couldn't possibly have known. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the forest was bathed in a soft golden light, the creature sat beside the human by the fire. Its eyes, as always, were locked on him, studying him with a depth that made the human uneasy. "I've noticed something about you, human," the creature said, its voice soft and almost musical. "You are not like the others. You are different from the others I have met. You are stronger, more curious. But there is also a part of you that fears the unknown, that fears what lies beyond." The human frowned, unsure of how to respond. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice a little shaky. The creature tilted its head, its large eyes shimmering in the fading light. "You are afraid of what will happen once you feed me completely. You wonder what I truly want from you, don't you? You wonder if the power I offer will come with a price." The human swallowed hard. He hadn't said a word, yet the creature had seen right through him. It was as though it could read his mind, his thoughts, every flicker of doubt and hesitation. "How was that possible? Why do you know so much?" the human asked, his voice a little more forceful now. The creature's lips curled into a smile, but it was not a smile of amusement. It was something darker, something knowing. "I know what I need to know, human. I have lived longer than you can imagine, and I have seen the rise and fall of many who have come before you. I have learned much in my time, and now I am teaching you." The human felt a chill run down his spine. "Teaching me? What are you teaching me?" The creature's eyes glowed brightly, its gaze intense and unblinking. "I am teaching you about power, human. About the power that lies in feeding, in sustaining, in giving. It is a lesson not just in feeding me, but in feeding yourself, in understanding the true cost of what you consume." The human was silent for a long moment, trying to wrap his mind around the creature's words. Was it trying to teach him something deeper, something about life itself? Or was it simply manipulating him, using his need for food and companionship to control him? The creature spoke again, breaking his thoughts. "You wonder what will happen when you feed me completely. Will I become too powerful? Will I leave you behind when I no longer need you? These are the questions that plague your mind, and yet, You have not yet asked the most important question. What question is that? The human asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. The creature's smile widened, though there was no joy in it. The question is, what happens when you no longer need me? What happens when you are full, when you have no more food to offer? Will you stop feeding me then, and will that be the end of it? The human's heart raced. Could he really stop? Could he stop feeding the creature once it had become so powerful, so important to him? He had already come so far, already grown so attached to the creature. It had become a part of his daily life, his routine. How could he just stop? I don't know, the human whispered, his voice barely audible. The creature leaned in closer, its face inches from his. Then perhaps you should learn, it said softly. Perhaps you should learn before it is too late. The human felt a sense of dread fill his chest. He had been so focused on the creature's demands, so focused on the food that he hadn't considered what would happen when the creature no longer needed him. What if one day it outgrew him? What if it left him behind? He glanced at the creature, its eyes now glowing brighter than ever. It was more than just a creature to him now. It was a constant, a presence that filled the space between his thoughts and his actions. But what if that presence was not something to be trusted? As the creature continued to speak, the human couldn't shake the feeling that he was caught in a web of his own making. And no matter how much he fed it, no matter how much he allowed himself to grow attached, the web was tightening. He could feel it. And yet, despite his growing anxiety, he couldn't bring himself to leave. Something about the creature's promise, about the power it offered, held him there, tethered to the spot. The creature's voice interrupted his thoughts. Feed me, human. Feed me, and you will understand. You will learn the true nature of this power. But the human didn't know if he wanted to learn anymore. The more the creature spoke, the more he felt the weight of its words pressing down on him. Was this the price of power? Or was there something far darker lurking beneath the surface? The decision. The air in the forest had changed. What once felt like a peaceful escape from the world now felt heavy, suffocating. The sun no longer seemed to shine through the trees with the same warmth, and the shadows seemed to grow longer as if time itself was slowing down. The human stood at the base of the ancient oak, looking out at the creature as it sat by the fire, its eyes glowing with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. He had reached a crossroads. A decision was looming before him, and the weight of it was unbearable. It had been weeks since he had first encountered the creature. Weeks since. The strange offer was made. Feed me, and I will serve you. But feed me enough, and I will become more than just a servant. As the days passed, the human had grown accustomed to the creature's presence. It had become a constant companion, cleaning his boots, gathering food, offering advice. In many ways, it had become more than just a creature. It was a force that seemed to shape the very world around him. But with each meal he gave it, with each offering, the creature seemed to grow stronger, more powerful, more demanding. It was no longer just about food. It was about something deeper, something more mysterious. The human had begun to realize that the creature's promises of power were not empty words. With every meal, the creature's influence over the forest and even over the human himself grew. The once peaceful forest now seemed darker, more alive with an unspoken energy, and the human felt it inside him too. He had asked the creature countless questions, but the answers were always vague, always leading to more uncertainty. You will understand when the time comes, the creature would say, its voice soft, almost hypnotic. The power I offer is not just for you, but for the world around you. Feed me, and you will change everything. But what did that mean? Could the world really be changed by something so small? And if it could, what kind of change was the creature promising? The human had been torn. He had grown dependent on the creature's presence, its promises, but a small part of him still wondered what would happen when he reached the point of no return. Would the creature truly leave him once it had absorbed everything it needed? Or would it consume him too, leaving nothing behind but an empty shell? The creature, sensing his turmoil, spoke, breaking the silence that had settled over them. "You are afraid, human," it said, its voice like a soothing breeze. "Afraid of what I will become, afraid of what will happen when you no longer have anything to feed me. But you must understand, this is the way of the world. You feed me, and in return I give you more than you can imagine. You will have power. You will have control over everything you see." The human's heart raced as the words sank in. Power. Control. These were things he had never thought he would desire, yet here they were, placed in front of him like an offering. He had never thought much of power, never felt the need for it. But now it seemed almost inevitable. The creature leaned in closer, its eyes fixed on his with an intensity that made the human's chest tighten. "You think of leaving, don't you?" it whispered, as if reading his thoughts. "You think you can walk away from me, from the gift I offer. But you cannot. You are already too far gone." The words stung. The human felt his legs weaken beneath him, as if the ground had suddenly become unstable. His hand trembled as he clenched it into a fist, trying to shake off the feeling of helplessness that was creeping over him. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why do you need me so badly? Why can't you survive on your own?" The creature's smile was soft, almost kind, but there was something behind it that made the human feel as though he were talking to a force much greater than himself. "I do not need you in the way you think. I need you because I am bound to you. You are the key to my power. You are the one who will unlock the door to a new world." The words hung in the air, and the human could feel the weight of them pressing down on him. He closed his eyes, trying to process what the creature had just said. A new world? What did that mean? Was the creature talking about his world, or something else? "I don't understand," the human muttered, his voice filled with frustration. "What are you offering me, really? What will happen if I say yes, and what will happen if I say no?" The creature's eyes softened, and for the first time it seemed almost human. "If you say yes, you will become part of something much greater than yourself. You will see the world for what it truly is. You will know things that others cannot even dream of, but if you say no—" The creature paused, its gaze turning dark. "If you say no, you will lose everything. You will return to a life of emptiness, of nothingness. You will be left to wander, searching for meaning that will never come." The human's chest tightened. He felt the weight of the creature's words, the heaviness of the decision. If he said yes, he would be bound to the creature forever, feeding it, serving it. But if he said no, he would lose everything he had gained, everything he had come to rely on. The silence stretched on, broken only by the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. The human's heart pounded in his chest, the decision consuming him. He had always believed in his own ability to choose his path, but now he realized that this choice, this moment, was beyond anything he had ever faced. He looked at the creature one last time, its eyes shining with an ancient, knowing light. It was as if it had already seen the future and it knew what the human would choose. "I choose," the human began, his voice trembling with uncertainty. The shift. The night felt colder than it ever had before. The once vibrant forest was now eerily still, as if it too was waiting for something. The creature's presence, once comforting and almost familiar, now felt oppressive, like a dark cloud hanging over the human's mind. He had made his choice, but the consequences of that choice were beginning to weigh on him in ways he had never imagined. The human sat by the fire, staring into the dancing flames. The decision was made. He had agreed to feed the creature until it was full, to continue this strange and unsettling pact, but a part of him still felt unsettled. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something had changed, in the very air around him. The forest no longer seemed like a place of refuge. It felt like a prison, and the creature was the warden. The creature, however, didn't seem to notice the change. It moved around the fire, humming softly to itself as it cleaned the human's boots once again, its tiny hands moving quickly and effortlessly. It had become more than just a servant, More than just a creature that cleaned and fed, it had become something far greater, something the human had unwittingly helped create. "I have served you well, human," the creature said, breaking the silence, its voice filled with satisfaction. "But now, the time has come for you to understand what it means to truly feed me." The human looked up at the creature, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice betraying a hint of unease. "You've already been fed, and I've already agreed to continue feeding you. What else do you want from me?" The creature smiled, its sharp teeth gleaming in the firelight. "It is not just food, human. You have already fed me enough for my physical form, but now I need more. I need the essence of your being, your energy, your soul." The human's heart raced. He had always suspected there was more to the creature than met the eye, but hearing it say those words out loud made the reality of the situation sink in with terrifying clarity. The creature wasn't just feeding on food. It was feeding on something deeper, something far more powerful. "What do you mean by my essence?" the human asked, his voice shaking. The creature moved closer, its eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made the human feel as though his very soul was being pulled into its gaze. "I need your energy, your will, your fear, your desires. All of these things are what feed me, human. I am not just a creature of the forest, I am a force, a presence that exists beyond your understanding. And as you feed me, I grow stronger, more powerful. And when I am full, I will no longer need you to feed me. You will become part of me, and I will become part of you." The words hit the human like a cold wave. He had known there was a price to this pact, but he hadn't realized the true cost until now. The creature was not just after food, it was after something far more dangerous. It was after him. "I didn't know," the human whispered, his voice faltering. "I didn't know it would be like this." The creature chuckled, its voice low and rumbling. "You didn't think it would be free, did you? There is always a cost to power, but now you have made your choice. You cannot walk away, not now." The human stood up, his mind racing. He had been so consumed by his curiosity, by the strange bond he had formed with the creature, that he hadn't fully considered the consequences. Now he was trapped in a deal he couldn't undo, a deal that was far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. "You can't just take my soul," the human said, his voice shaking with fear and anger. "I won't let you." The creature's smile widened, but it was not one of kindness. It was cold, knowing, as if it had already won. "You already have given it to me, human. You just haven't realized it yet. Every meal you gave me, every time you fed me, you gave me a piece of yourself. I have been feeding on you little by little, and now I am stronger than I've ever been." The human took a step back, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature was right. He had been feeding it not just with food, but with pieces of his soul, with his fears, his hopes, his very essence. He had thought it was just an innocent exchange, but now it felt like a slow, creeping death. "I won't let you control me," the human said, though his voice lacked conviction. He was no longer sure what was possible. Was it too late to stop it? Could he fight back? The creature reached out, its tiny hand brushing against the human's cheek with an unsettling tenderness. "You already are under my control, human, you just don't know it yet. You can try to fight it, but the more you resist, the more power I gain." The human's head swam. He felt dizzy, like he was being pulled in every direction at once. He had made a terrible mistake, and now there was no way to undo it. The creature's words echoed in his mind, and he could feel the weight of them pressing down on him. Suddenly, he remembered something the creature had said on the first day they met. "Feed me, and I will stay. Feed me, and I will serve you." But it wasn't just about feeding anymore. It was about being consumed, about losing himself in the process. He had been so eager to take what the creature offered, so eager to accept its power, but now it seemed like the power was consuming him, piece by piece. The fire crackled in the silence between them, and the human realized with a sudden clarity that he had a choice. It wasn't too late. He could still break free, but it would take everything he had left, the strength to defy the creature, to fight back against its control. "I won't let you win," the human said, his voice steady. now filled with determination. The creature's smile faded, replaced by something darker. "Then you will lose," it said, its voice cold and final. But the human wasn't afraid anymore. He had made his decision. The creature's grip on him, its influence over him, had lasted long enough. It was time to take back control. The price of power. The air in the forest had become thick with anticipation. The human could feel it pressing in on him, almost suffocating. The creature was watching him, its eyes glowing brighter than ever, its presence more imposing than he could have ever imagined. The bond between them had grown so strong that he could feel its power coursing through his veins. Every breath he took felt heavier, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. He had chosen to feed the creature, to continue the strange pact they had made. But with each passing day, he could feel the cost of that decision. The power the creature had promised was intoxicating, yes, but it came with a price. The more the human fed it, the more he felt his own essence slipping away. He was no longer just a man in the forest. He was becoming something else, something that was slowly being consumed by the very force he had welcomed into his life. The creature had grown stronger with each meal, its powers expanding beyond what the human could comprehend. It could bend the trees with a single thought, summon the winds with a whisper, and even control the flow of the river nearby. The forest had become its domain, and the human had become a part of it, a servant to the creature's will. But now, as the creature's power surged, the human began to realize the true extent of what he had given up. His thoughts felt clouded, his will becoming weaker with each passing day. The creature was no longer just feeding on his energy, it was taking his very soul, bit by bit, leaving him a hollow shell of the person he once was. One evening, as the human sat by the fire, the creature approached him, its eyes filled with an unsettling intensity. "You have given me much, human," it said, its voice soft but filled with an unspoken threat. "But the time has come for you to understand the true nature of our bond." The human looked up at it, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The creature smiled, a dark, knowing smile. "You think you are still in control, don't you? You think you can stop feeding me whenever you choose, but you are wrong. You are already mine, human. You gave yourself to me the moment you decided to feed me, and now there is no turning back." The words hit the human like a physical blow. He had known deep down that there was something wrong, but hearing the creature say it so plainly made it real. He had already lost himself piece by piece. The more he fed the creature, the more he had given up, and now it seemed like there was no way out. The creature continued, its voice low and almost hypnotic. "I have consumed your fears, your desires, your very essence. With every meal, you have become less of yourself and more of me, and now you are no longer the person who first walked into this forest. You are mine just as much as I am yours." The human's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the creature's words sinking in, could feel the weight of them pressing down on his soul. He had become a vessel for its power, a conduit for its insatiable hunger. But was that really all he was now? A pawn in a game he didn't even fully understand? "You're wrong," the human said, his voice weak but defiant. "I still have control. I can still stop this. I can still walk away." The creature laughed, a low, chilling sound that seemed to echo through the forest. "You still think you have control?" it said. "You think you can walk away from me after all that you have given? You are already too far gone. You are mine, and there is nothing you can do to escape." The human's hands clenched into fists, his body trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. He had made a terrible mistake, yes, but he wasn't going to let it consume him completely. There had to be a way out, a way to break free from the creature's grip. "You can't have me," the human said, his voice gaining strength. "I may have given you pieces of myself, but I still have my will, and I won't let you take that from me." The creature's smile faded, and for the first time, the human saw a flicker of uncertainty in its eyes. "You think you can resist me? You think you can fight against the bond we share?" it said, its voice tinged with something darker. You cannot. The more you resist, the stronger I become. The more you fight, the more you feed me. And the more you feed me, the more I will consume you. The human took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had to do something. He couldn't let the creature win, couldn't let it claim him completely. He had to find a way to fight back, to regain control. Then I will stop feeding you, the human said, his voice steady and firm. I will stop, and I will take back what is mine. The creature's eyes narrowed, its smile returning, but this time there was something dangerous in it. You think you can stop? You think you can just walk away after all this time? It asked, its voice laced with mockery. You are mine, human, and I will never let you go. But the human didn't flinch. He stood up, his body trembling with the effort of resisting the creature's pull. He could feel it, the creature's hunger, its need to consume him. But he wasn't going to let it have him. Not without a fight. With every ounce of strength he had left, the human focused on his own will, on the part of him that still remained untouched by the creature's influence. He reached deep inside himself, finding the last vestiges of his own power, his own identity. He would not be consumed. He would not become a part of the creature. For a moment there was silence. The creature stared at him, its eyes flickering with something that resembled uncertainty. And then, the human took a step back, breaking the connection between them. The creature snarled, its form shifting, its power radiating from it in waves. But the human stood his ground. I am still human, he said, his voice ringing out with newfound clarity. And I will fight for that. The creature's eyes burned with rage, but the human could feel it weakening, the grip it had on him starting to loosen. He had found his strength again. He had found the will to break free. And for the first time in weeks, the forest felt like a place of possibility. The creature's power still lingered in the air, but the human knew that he was no longer its prisoner. He had regained control, but the battle was far from over. The creature was not going to give up easily, and the human knew that he would have to face it one last time. The ultimate choice. The night had fallen, and the forest seemed to hum with an energy that was almost palpable. The moon hung high above, casting a pale glow over the land, but it felt different tonight, colder, sharper, like a storm was brewing just beneath the surface. The human stood alone, his eyes locked on the creature, which had now become something far more than just a strange being in the woods. It was a force, a presence, something that had slowly crept into his life and consumed everything in its path. The air was thick with the weight of their final confrontation. The creature stood before him, its eyes burning with an intensity that was almost blinding. It no longer looked like the tiny being he had first encountered. It had grown, become something far more powerful, its form rippling with dark energy. It was no longer just feeding on his essence, it had become part of him, and he could feel it coursing through his veins, pulsing in his chest. You have done well, human, the creature said, its voice low and resonant, like the rumble of distant thunder. You have fed me. You have given me everything, and now you will understand the price. The human stood tall, though his heart raced with the tension of the moment. The creature's power, its pull, had never been stronger. He could feel it in every inch of his body, but there was something else too. A small flicker of resistance deep within him. He had fought to hold on to what was left of his soul to preserve his will. And now, standing before the creature, he knew it was time to make the final choice. What price? The human asked, his voice steady, though he could feel the weight of the question bearing down on him. What do you want from me now? I've given you everything. I've fed you. What more is there? The creature's smile twisted into something cruel. You've given me your fears, your desires, your essence. But there is one thing you have yet to give, one final thing that will seal our bond. You must give me your will, human. You must give me the very core of who you are. Only then will I be truly complete. The words hung in the air, and for a moment the human felt a shiver run down his spine. The creature was offering him everything: power, knowledge, control. But at what cost? It wanted his will, his very identity. If he gave that up, there, would be nothing left of him. He would be lost, swallowed up by the creature's hunger. But if he didn't, if he resisted, what would happen to him then? "You want my soul," the human said, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and defiance. "You want everything that makes me who I am. But I'm not going to give that to you. Not anymore." The creature's eyes narrowed, its glowing form flickering with anger. "You think you can defy me? You think you can walk away from this, from what we have become together? I have consumed everything you have given me, and now I will consume you completely. You will never leave me. I will never let you go." The words hit the human like a physical blow, and for a moment, he felt himself falter. The creature was right. He had fed it, had given it so much of himself that there was almost nothing left. The creature had already taken so much. How could he possibly resist now? But then, something inside the human stirred. A spark of defiance, a flicker of the person he had once been. He had been consumed by the creature, yes, but he wasn't completely lost. There was still something deep inside of him that refused to be swallowed up. He could still feel it, his will, his desire to fight back, to reclaim what was his. The creature might have consumed his fears and his desires, but it hadn't taken his spirit. "I am not yours," the human said, his voice stronger now. "I have fed you. I have given you what you wanted, but I will not give you my will. I will not become part of you. I will fight for what's left of me, no matter what it costs." The creature's eyes blazed with fury, its form pulsing with dark energy. "You think you can resist me? You think you can fight what I have become? You are nothing without me. Human, you are nothing but a puppet, a plaything for my power. You cannot defeat me." The human's chest tightened with fear, but his resolve remained. He had come this far, hadn't he? He had made it through the darkness, through the pull of the creature's influence, and now he had to make the final stand. If he gave in, if he allowed the creature to consume his will, then there would be nothing left of him. But if he fought, if he found the strength to resist, then there was still a chance, there was still hope. "You've taken so much from me," the human said, his voice growing louder with each word. "But you will not take my will. You will not take my soul. I am still human. And as long as I am, I will never give you what you want." The creature's roar echoed through the forest, shaking the trees and sending a wave of dark energy rippling through the ground. "You will regret this, human. You cannot escape me. You cannot escape the price of what you have chosen." But the human stood his ground, his body trembling but unyielding. He could feel the creature's power pressing in on him, trying to crush him, but he refused to give in. He had made his choice, and now he had to see it through. With every ounce of strength he had left, the human focused on the part of him that was still his own. His will, his mind, his spirit. He reached deep within himself and found the strength to fight back. He would not let the creature consume him completely. He would not let it win. "I will not give up," the human said, his voice filled with determination. "I will fight for myself. I will fight for my soul." For a moment, there was silence. The creature's form flickered, its glowing eyes dimming, and the dark energy that had been swirling around them seemed to waver. The human felt the weight of the creature's influence begin to loosen, felt the bond between them weaken. He could feel the creature's power slipping away, its grip loosening. With one final defiant cry, the human broke free from the creature's grasp, pulling himself out of the darkness that had threatened to consume him. The creature screamed, in fury. But it was too late. The human had reclaimed his will, and with it he had broken the creature's hold over him. The forest was still. The creature, its power diminished, stood motionless before the human. For the first time, it seemed defeated, and in that moment the human realized something. The true cost of power wasn't in what you gave, it was in what you were willing to lose, and he had lost enough. He had made his choice, and he had fought for what was his. The creature had wanted everything, but in the end, it had only gotten what the human had allowed.